Hey, aloha everyone. Welcome to week number 5, module number 5, nonverbal communication. Just a quick recap. Last week was the informative speeches. Take a look at the flip grid. There's so many good speeches up there. If you're not sure about your speech or a little bit hesitant, just see what's up there. Just be you and pick stuff you're really interested in. If you watch some of the speeches, the titles, you're like, and then you see it. There's some really, really interesting things in there. So if you're not sure what to do, watch what the others are posting because there's some really good speeches up there, okay? So the next weeks 5 and 6, we're kind of go back to the original format where we're going to learn about kind of the terms in here and some of the concepts. So this week is nonverbal communication and kind of the same setup, right, as we've been through before. So let me scroll down here a little bit. So this week's goal, it relates to learning outcome number 3 there. It says demonstrate and evaluate effective verbal and nonverbal. So nonverbal communication. So how do you show that? How do you evaluate that, right? So we'll do that this week by doing a flip grid video as usual, a quiz, and an essay. Okay, so scrolling down here as we go. This week's video, I realized I should have put an or in here. So for the folks who went already, sorry about that. But it says, in a 1 to 2 minute video, discuss how nonverbal communication can reveal our liking, disliking of others, our position, status, power in society. And it should say and or responsiveness toward others. So you can't answer all that. I mean, you could in 2 minutes, but if you want, just cover one of those, okay, in your 1 to 2 minutes for flip grid. And great job on the flip grids, by the way. Just keep being you, keep relaxing. I think you're going to find if you scroll back and look at some of your first videos or other folks were a little bit hesitant, me too, look at my first video. And as we move along in this world, in this class, hopefully you get really comfortable at doing this. And I'm realizing it's a chance for you to create your own world by the way we talk, right? This is how the world is. I see it this way. Okay. The quiz, hopefully those are no problem. I'll get this video up. It'll be right here in a few minutes. For the quizzes, again, you can take them as many times as you want. I see some low scores in there. No shame. I have no idea how many times you take it. So go back in there. Once the due date passes, you can take it once, again, if you like. If you have any problems, let me know. I can open them back up as well, okay? This week's writing assignment, here it is. Same thing as usual. Choose one, just one of these concepts, 2 of the terms. Just cut and paste them over, bold them. And some people are talking about them individually, that's fine. Some people are writing these just pages for me that are really fun to read. It's a narrative, it's a story with all 3 in there. So either way, what works for you, right? This is college. There's no minimum word requirement, but more than a sentence each would really be what you should do for college, okay? So let me go through, that's it for this week. Let me go through the slides very quickly. And before we get to those slides, here are the terms and the concepts. I'll try to cover these in the slides. Again, if you want to check out now, you have a clear idea of what to do for this week, you're good to go. Thank you for your 3 minutes. If you want to hang out, I don't know, maybe 5-6 more minutes, it's kind of like a mini lecture. I'll try to cover the slides and the book. So in case you're not reading the book, you have a good idea what's going on in terms of what you should talk about for these. Okay, so let me switch over to the slides, and if you want to hang out, listen in. Okay, we're going to try this full screen mode today. Again, this is from your book, Invitation to Human Communication by Dr. Cindy Griffin. Really interesting stuff in this chapter. So one of the things you can talk about in your writing for this module is how do culture and gender affect our nonverbal communication? If you think about it, it's pretty important. It's everything. Nonverbal communication, just get it over with quickly, is everything we use to communicate besides the words themselves. So the tone of voice, the time, our body language, everything we'll talk about in this chapter. But to get started, think about how different culture and gender are, right? When you go to certain societies, do you shake hands? Do you stare people in their eyes when they're talking, or do you look down? So all of these things are going to matter. So think about that as you write. So this first one we'll talk about, when people talk about body language or nonverbal communication, this is kind of the first one we usually think about, right? And it's kinesics is what it is. If you study kinesiology to be a physical therapist, or how the body works, this is the field of nonverbal communication that relates to body language, how we move. Affect displays, adapters. You can look into those, but basically, if you look in the book, there's interesting ways you can tell if people like you just by their kinesics. If maybe they're preening, right, they're fixing themselves. You can tell people are not listening if they're angling away from you. Micro expressions are really interesting. So part of kinesics are your facial expressions as well. I think it's in this book. It talks about lie detector tests, and they actually find that people who are good at reading micro expressions, right? I did, the little gaps in that, and then when you're deceiving people, it's a little more accurate than actual lie detector tests. So if you get good at reading those micro expressions, look that up. It's really interesting. I'm gonna leave my picture up here, and I'll explain what these are down here. So continue with the visual code. So again, nonverbal communication that you can see, that you can interpret by seeing it. So the first one was body language, right? Kinesics. This one is proxemics. So this is space. It's just based on space. And this is interesting. This is going to be one of those things you want to think about where maybe this is cultural. Okay. So you can look in the book, and they'll talk about these different distances. So intimate distance up to 18 inches, personal distance up to 3 feet, social distance, I think 6 feet, so forth and so on. And why it matters is if you think about if you've taken public transportation in the U.S. or in Hawaii, for example, how closely do we stand to each other, right? Or if you're in a bank or in a McDonald's, how close can the person behind you stand? I lived in Beijing, China for like 5 years, and it's so different over there. It's because it's so crowded, it's acceptable to like touch strangers when you're in the the subway or in McDonald's. Maybe someone's breathing down your neck. That's totally normal when there's 20 million people in that city. So part of it's cultural as well, right? So distances, the ones you can't see here, it says artifacts and personal appearance. So artifacts, if you look how people are dressed, if you look at my glasses, my windward shirt, right? My microphone, when you go out in public, your laptop, your car, all of these things that we can see communicate, right? Why do you buy these glasses? I could have gotten a John Lennon ones, but because I'm trying to communicate like who I am, right? Why do you get a haircut? That's back to the visual codes, right? So let's take a look at some more. Okay, these are auditory. So these are things you can hear in nonverbal communication. They're not the words, though. So kind of the hardest one here is really the paralinguistics, vocalics as well. And the example I always use for this is if I just changed one thing about my paralinguistics. So if I started talking in my Mickey Mouse voice, people think, well, that's kind of strange. All I'm doing is changing the tone of my voice. Or I could start talking very slowly, right? So even though the words stay the same, your tone, your pitch, your rhythm, all cadence, all those things can really communicate, right? So someone asked you a question, where do you want to go for dinner? Oh, whatever. What do you want to do for dinner? Whatever. So you get the idea. Vocal cues, pauses, being monotone, and the last one there's silence. Look in the book again. There's so many good examples, but all of these things communicate. So you back to chapter 1, you cannot not communicate. So even though you want to go to class, or maybe you're lecturing your kid, or maybe some of you kids are getting lectured from your parents, I'm just going to be silent. I'm just going to disappear, be silent. That's communicating, right? And again, culturally, it's different. Some cultures, it's expected that the child is just silent. Says, I just learned that, right? From different cultures, that they just, no matter getting lectured. Other cultures, you're expected to say something back, or at least look people in the eye. So culture matters. Okay, moving along. Save time. Kidding. Invisible codes. So these are other things you can't really see. So chronemics and olfactics. Chronemics are fascinating. Chronemics are time. And you think, what do you mean time? It's like, yes, we use time to communicate. So just think of the text message, right? Someone you really like, they send you a text. Oh, how long should I wait to text back, right? 1 minute, 1 hour. Someone you don't like sends you a text. Are you going to text back even, right? So that sense of time there. Another example I use, if you go to the doctor, we always wait, right? It says be there at 10. We wait 15 minutes, half an hour, for an hour for a specialist. Why do we wait? If you go down Beretania Street over here, there's in Honolulu, there's a McDonald's and a Burger King, right? Literally on the opposite sides of the street. If there's a line at Burger King, what do? I just go to McDonald's. I'm not going to wait for my fast food, right? So think about how we use time to communicate to people in society as well. Are you allowed to be late? Are you allowed to be early? So look that up. Talk about Hawaiian time. Look it up there, polychronic cultures. The second one here that you can't see but communicate, which is fascinating, is olfactics. So olfactics, olfactory nerves, smell. How does smell communicate? Let's just think about the last time you were on a bus, or maybe the last time you walked into Macy's. How do you know what smells expensive? What's the difference between Axe body spray, right, and a $5,000 bottle of an ounce of Chanel No. 5? How do we know? Are we taught those things? Or is some of it natural? For example, fermented food, right? Oh, it doesn't smell because it's spoiled, but there's a certain, right? So it communicates something. So think about how the way we smell and the way we use smells. Even a business has that peppermint or the cookie spray coming out to attract people, right? Or scare people away. Okay, just 2 more here, almost done. Another invisible code, and this is interesting as well, haptics. Remember this one, haptics with the T. I remember haptics as in touch, right? So touch communicates, right? And there's functional, professional. You think about a dentist. If you have a hard time touching strangers, dentist is probably a really hard job. You're right up there in their face. You got the mask on, right? Social or polite touch, you can think about a big difference between here in Hawaii and on the continent or pretty much anywhere else. Oh, maybe South America, I guess, yeah? Now chime in there. I've heard people from Brazil do this too. The hugging and the kissing of strangers, auntie, uncle, right? That's very common here. Friendship, warmth. When you're with your friends, do you pat them on the back? Do you hug? Do the guys do each other's hair? No. So we talk about gender, so think about that when you write. Love and intimacy, sexual arousal. These are all touch. These are all ways to communicate without using words. It's fascinating, really. Okay, this is the last one here. Last invisible code. Two things. One is environment and one is technology. So you think about environment. Well, how does environment communicate? Back to McDonald's. What does McDonald's look like when we could go in there, right? What were the seats like? What was the color like? They were hard. It was plastic. I remember the one on King Street was just freezing, right? It was just freezing cold in there. And there'd be the senior citizens in there getting their free coffee. I'm like, man, how can they? And they had jackets on. It's like 90 degrees in the summer. So why does McDonald's make their environment that way versus Starbucks, right? Go Google Starbucks, look at the picture. It's really nice, it's comfy, it's cushy, it's green in there. They want you to stay. Well, nowadays what they do, they take all the furniture out, so we don't want to stay. So environment matters, right? I'm curious, what's it like studying at home in your own environment versus if we all have to drive to the campus and meet in the classroom, right? And the last one here is technology. This is really fun for me, actually. Think about how technology communicates. Does it help having a microphone, right? I know a lot of folks are kind of talking, you can barely hear them, but does that help? I got to share a quick story with my poor mom. She's like 79, she's getting on Zoom for the first time, and she didn't know how to control her camera, and she just made herself like huge, like what's everybody? And that's part of technology, right? So people who are used to it, we naturally kind of do this 1/3 thing, but if you're not used to it, and it's like, hey, how's everybody going there? Can you see my nose here? And we're doing something like that can communicate, right? So even the background, all these things. So it's really fascinating nowadays. So thank you for your 12 minutes of your time. That's nonverbal communication in a nutshell. If you're interested, please read the book. Dr. Griffin was a really amazing teacher, and the stuff in there really talks deeply about how you get a lot of this from just the way you're raised and the culture we're in and the gender we are. Okay, so thanks a lot. Let me know if you have questions. Email me anytime. jbho@hawaii.edu. Okay, thank you.